You may be seated. It is so good to see all of you, and I have been looking forward to this moment. I was here maybe 3-4 years ago. It was a Sunday night, a special event, and got to speak, and you guys are just incredible people. I loved every moment of that, so I've been waiting for the invitation again. It took that long to get back, but it is so good to see all of you. Pastor Matt and Caitlin, they have become such great friends of our family, and not just in ministry, but just good people, good friends, and we have enjoyed that relationship. Also, I talked to Pastor Matt a few weeks ago, and it was right before he was going in for the surgery, and realized just how bad, his back had become. And so we as a church, Citizen Church, we have gathered together, and we've been praying for a miracle for him and his recovery, joining in with all of you, and we certainly believe that, and we believe that we're seeing that come to pass right now. And so while he's away, continue to pray for him. What great leaders they are, and just great people that you are. Pastor Sean, thank you for hosting today, and you are an amazing man. Just hanging out with you, I want to be best friends with you. You're a great man, and just enjoyed the time that we've had together today. Hey, let me mention to you that I just wrote a book entitled "A Matter of Time," and it's to parents and grandparents. And it's about how to raise leaders in our homes. I've spent about 2 years in writing this. This has become a great passion of mine. If you are a parent or a grandparent, you realize the times that we live in today, how risky and how scary it is to raise kids up in this environment. And when our kids are in middle school and high school, there is absolutely no reason why that our kids ought to be following their peers. But when they're in middle school and high school, their peers ought to be following our kids. And so they need to be leaders. We are in a leadership crisis in this nation. And if you are interested in that as a parent or a grandparent, you can just go to GalenWoodward.org. It's not .com, it's .org. And you can order that book, and they'll send it out to you the day that they receive that order. But I really want to somehow impact the society that we're in, where to go, and how to raise great leaders. The reason why that I mentioned that is because this morning I want to speak from one of the chapters in that book. And today I want to talk to you on a subject that has become the lost character trait. And I want us to really focus in for a moment. You've taken the time to get up this morning, get ready, get dressed, drive all the way here. And there's no reason why that we come together, we spend that kind of time and energy and walk out the very. And so today I want to talk to you on the lost character trait, which is honor. On talk radio, cable network, social media, every single day, we find that there are attacks and slander and character assassinations day after day after day. Somehow, as a society, that in a very, very short amount of time that we have justified hating anyone who disagrees with us. Our children are sitting by and they're watching and they're effectively learning that they can dishonor anyone in authority over them as long as they dislike them or they disagree with them. Wow. It was about a year ago when I was writing this chapter on honor that I would go out into the atrium after each of our services and just mingle with the people that are there week after week, and I would walk up and say, "Hey, can you help me with something? I'm writing on the topic of honor, and can you tell me who deserves to be honored and who does not deserve to be honored?" You would have thought I had asked the most difficult question they had ever been asked in their life. They looked down, they shuffled their feet, they stumbled over their words, trying to answer it correctly. I want you to answer that in your mind. Who deserves to be honored and who does not deserve to be honored? Let me ask you this question also. When you think in your past, who are the people that you remember? Well, I can tell you some of the people that you don't remember. You probably don't remember the names of the last 5 Miss Americas. You probably don't remember the names of the last 5 Academy Award winners. You probably don't even remember the names of the most valuable players in the National League, football, basketball, baseball. And it's a funny thing how we forget the names of people who have accomplished such great things. But let me tell you who you do remember. You remember the person who helped you in a very difficult time of life. You remember the name of the person who led you to Christ. You remember the name of the one who believed in you when no one else believed in you. And the reason why is because those people served you and they honored you. And honor will burn a deep, deep impression into your memory. So, who deserves to be honored? Well, let's look at it biblically. In Matthew 20, in verse 28, a very familiar verse that we know, and it says, the Son of Man, talking about Jesus, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. When it comes to serving, serving is honoring. Honoring is serving. They are synonymous. When you look at what honor is, think about this, it's when we hold someone in high esteem, we revere them, and we value them. So really, we don't have to wonder who we are to honor because the Bible lays out 10 people groups that we are commissioned to honor. And I want you to look at this. We are to honor one another. We are to honor our parents, our children, our wives. We are to honor our husbands, the elderly, widows. We are to honor our bosses and the emperor. I want you to notice when you look at this list that there are no stipulations. There are no ifs and there are no buts. It is a requirement, it's a qualification of every born-again believer to honor each of these people groups. Peter, on one occasion, made this shocking statement. In 1 Peter 2 and verse 17, he says, so show proper respect to everyone, love the family of believers, honor the emperor. He's talking about honoring family members, the household of faith, other believers. And then randomly, he makes this very strange statement, honor the emperor. Let me give you a little historical background when he was writing this and speaking these words. The emperor of his day was Nero. Nero was a perverted madman. Yeah. He was vicious. He took torturing and killing to a whole nother level. And so it's unimaginable to me whenever you think about as Peter is standing before a congregation just like this of believers. And as he's speaking to them, he is telling them, even honor the emperor. How would you feel sitting there listening to Peter make that statement? When your own mom had been dragged out of her house by the Romans for no other reason but proclaiming that Jesus is Lord and God, and they nail her to a cross, and they pour tar all over her body. Then they raise up that cross and set it on fire as a human torch to light one of Nero's drunken garden parties. And now you're sitting there listening to Peter say, and we are to honor even the emperor. It is so absurd. And it is so unreasonable that it doesn't make any kind of logical sense to any of us. 2,000 years later, where we are today, that in the last couple of years, the United States presidency has never been more polarizing than it is today, and we are constantly hearing about it. It has divided people, and it doesn't matter if it's President Bush, President Obama, President Trump, President Biden. Oh, we all have the right and the ability to strongly disagree with those leaders. We have the right to disagree with their decisions, their policies, their morals. And when we get into debates with other people, family members, people we work with, it's easy for our conversation to become inflamed because we think so differently than someone else in that debate. But Peter instructs us, and he warns us not to get caught up in the culture of hating, because hating and defaming is the culture of the world, and it is not the culture of the believer. Here's the biblical mandate. We are to honor all people, regardless of their behavior. We are to honor regardless of their behavior. Let me tell you, that's a hard pill to swallow. Because what we naturally want to say is, I would honor my father if he deserved to be honored. I would honor my mother if she would just change her ways. Then, if she changed her ways, I would honor her. But that's not what we're told, and it's not the mandate of the Word of God. You see, the reason why is the person that you're looking at and you're speaking to. We begin to understand that the reason why that we are to honor all people is that you're looking at someone who has been formed and created and designed by the very hands of God. He has created every individual in his own image, and then he crowned them with glory and honor. And we honor all people because we have understanding today that we look beyond bad behavior, and we begin to look beyond those bad actions. But we're looking at one who has been formed and created and knitted together in their mother's womb, fearfully and wonderfully made. And we honor not by who they are, but we honor by who they are and how they've been created. Yeah. So when we think about honor, how do we restore it back into our homes? How do we restore honor back into our society? In Ephesians 6, verses 1 through 3, it says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother." I want you to notice this. In this passage, it lays out two aspects of leadership development for our children. It talks about obedience and it talks about honor. Most parents have the understanding that obedience is important. Most of us are very, very good on teaching our kids how to obey. But when it comes to honor, it's rarely ever taught in our homes, even in Christian homes, because we rarely understand what honor is. Here's the definition of obedience. Obedience is doing what someone says. Obedience is doing a task, following directions. It's more mechanical. It's the act of the will. It's doing what we are told to do. We understand that. For instance, how many times have we watched our own kids do this? Walking through the house, and they're passing by bedrooms with beds unmade. They're stepping all over dirty clothes and walking out the door, just walking past all of that. They walk through the kitchen, past the sink full of dirty dishes, and in their mind, they're thinking, it's not my mess. I didn't make the mess. It's not my responsibility. And you know what? They're absolutely right, and it's true. If you are solely being trained and taught obedience, but honor adds a deeper dimension to our relationships. Here's the definition of honor. It is not an act of the will. It's an act of the heart. Honor is treating people special, and it's doing more than is expected. And whenever honor begins to flow from one family member to the next, then it can possibly start looking like this. Maybe in your home, you have a schedule, and where one of the kids will do the dishes each night after dinner. Last night, it was your son's time to do the dishes. Tonight, it's your daughter's turn. After everyone finishes eating, she gets up from the table and goes over to the sink and starts washing the dishes. Her younger brother gets up and he walks in behind her and he lets out a sarcastic laugh. You know, we know how this plays out. He's poking at her, and it's some verbal jabs that you're stuck doing the dishes and I'm not, and I'm free to do whatever I want to do. I mean, just agitating her, and then she wheels around and she unloads on him verbally, and it just destroys the family harmony for the rest of the night. Puts everything on edge, all of the tension in the home. When we have been teachers of honor in our home, from time to time, that scene could look like this. The daughter goes and starts doing the dishes. The son, the younger brother, did them last night, but he gets up from the table and he walks over to the sink and he says, "Hey, sister, scoot over. Let me help you do the dishes tonight. Let me help you do it in half the time. And then we can go watch a movie. We can go play a game together." You see, what happens is honor changes everything. Honor treats people special. Obedience focuses on a task. Honor focuses on others. Here is a great way, an easy way to implement honor into our homes. It's simply by developing a family culture statement. Here is ours. Let me read it to you. We believe being a Woodward is special. We're not just out for ourselves. We work as a team. When a job needs to be done, the Woodward team pulls together. We work hard to clean up the house, to do yard work, to share in any needs and responsibilities, because we are a team. Let me tell you what happens. When you go to the extent of writing it out and mounting it somewhere on the refrigerator or on the wall where everyone sees it every day, it becomes a standard of identity of who we are and that we stand as a team, and it begins to impact their thinking. You see, when you have a statement like this, what they understand is that name-calling, belittling, agitating, hitting, screaming is absolutely not permitted because it's a violation of who we are. Say it clearly and say it often. In this family, we respect and honor one another. Let them hear those words. We honor one another. Mom and Dad, don't ever fall into the deception of believing that your kids one day will grow out of their negative behavior, because it will never happen. They will not grow out of it. They will grow deeper and more entrenched in all of those things. In fact, it will go so deep in them that they will take it into adulthood and into their marriages and into their own children one day. Establishing honor, again, can be incredibly easy if we as parents and we as grandparents are mindful of the power of honor. You know, I have experienced this, and maybe you have as well. Have you ever been away at work all day long? I mean, you left early that morning, maybe even before the kids were up, and now at 5:30 you're walking in the door. And as you walk in the door of your home, you're so glad to be home. And as you walk through the house, you're passing by family members, and one of them is on the phone, and someone else is doing homework, and someone else is watching television, and you barely get a grunt out of anyone, and you stop and think, does anyone even care that I'm home? Well, you know, we can learn a lot from our family dog, because every time I come home and I open that door, it doesn't matter where my dog is, she jumps up and she comes running to that front door, barking and leaping and jumping, and she's so excited that I'm home. Now, I know that dogs can really overdo it, because I can go out with the trash and throw it in the dumpster outside, be gone about 3 minutes, but when I open the door, it's the same scene all over again. She's running to the front door, jumping and leaping and barking, so glad that I walked in the door. But what if we put that as a standard, a new standard in our home? That when someone has been away from the home, all day at school, all day at work, when a family member walks in the door, we acknowledge that they're home. That we may stand up from where we are, from what we're doing, walk to the front door and give them a hug and just say, I'm glad you're home, Dad. Glad you're home, Mom. And where that we embrace acknowledging one another. Now, if you try to establish that in your home and you have teenagers, I want to tell you, they are going to mock that and they're going to roll their eyes and they're going to make that so awkward because that's what teenagers do. They just make everything awkward. But you know what? You establish that. We always stand and we greet one another at the door. Over a period of time, there's a mentality shift that takes place. It may be slow, but it will begin to shift their mentality. That it's not all about me, but it's about other people. And some little small act of that begins to rip the me mentality out of me. That it's not all about me, but it's about someone else. It's about focusing on someone else's life. You see, what we need to teach ourselves and to teach others in our home is that we are second mile people. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. One of the marvels of ancient Rome was their vast highway systems. Rome had over 50,000 miles of roads. Every time they conquered a new territory or a new city, they would build roads from that city all the way back to Rome. And it's where we get the old saying is that all roads lead to Rome, because it is absolutely true. On these Roman roads, they also would have white stones. They were markers every mile, that as you traveled, you knew exactly how far you had gone and how much further you had to go to reach the next city. A little white marker every mile. The Romans established a new law for Roman citizens. It was a benefit for them that when they traveled on those roads, they had the right, it was law, that they could ask a non-citizen to carry their heavy load, their heavy backpack for 1 mile, but 1 mile only. The Jewish people hated it. It was humiliating to them. Every time they got out on the road to travel, some Roman citizen would say, I want you to carry my backpack, and by law, they had to put the heavy load on, plus their own load, and carry it for the next mile. And when they got to the marker, they dropped it, and they were so humiliated by having to do so. Jesus one day, on this beautiful hill there at the Sea of Galilee, was preaching. It's a Sermon on the Mount, and he addresses this Roman law. In Matthew 5:41, he says, if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. These people knew exactly what he was talking about. The very thing they despised, the very thing they resented, and now Jesus is saying, carry it 1 mile, and then carry it an extra mile. What Jesus wanted them to get is that it's a shift in our mind. It's a new mindset that separates us from the rest of the world. And whenever you begin to develop a mindset different than the world, people begin to take notice. And when you begin to honor, it will set you above everyone else. All eyes are on you because you are a rarity in this world. You see, the first mile is the mile of obedience. The second mile is the mile of honor. The first mile is the action of common people. The second mile is the action of a rare few, again, that will set you above everyone else. In 2 Samuel, David had just killed Goliath. He became an instant hero as a 17-year-old kid. Wow, when that took place, they took this kid, they brought him to Jerusalem, and now he was living in the palace. David was young, he was strong, handsome, a mighty warrior, seen as the greatest warrior in the land. Everything was great for a while. But King Saul, living in the palace, began to realize these people love David more than they love me. They respect him more than they respect me. And it ate him alive, the jealousy. And he came to the place where he despised and hated David. And he finally ran David out of the palace trying to kill him. David ran for his life and was out in the wilderness for a long, long time with nothing. Nothing. Saul took some of his own men, his soldiers, some of the greatest warriors he had, and the command was, find David and kill him on the spot. Well, sometime later that King Saul had to go to battle against the Philistines. He was on the battlefield, and the Philistines were coming up the hill, and they were advancing quickly, and they were slaughtering the Israelites. All of a sudden, King Saul on the battlefield is wounded by an arrow, and he falls to the ground. He sees the Philistines coming quickly, a violent, cruel people, and he knew that if they found him, the king of Israel, that they would torture him horribly into his death, and Saul fell on his own sword to end his life. When the word went back to the palace in Jerusalem that their king and leader was dead, panic began to soar through the kingdom because they had no leader, they had no one to guide them, and they wondered, will the Philistines come in and slaughter all of us? Chaos, and people were running for their lives. In the palace, there's a 5-year-old boy, and it's King Saul's grandson. And there was a nanny who was taking care of him, and she scoops up this 5-year-old, and she starts running with everyone else, running for their lives. And as she's running down those stone steps, she trips and falls with him, and they're trampled by the crowd behind. And the little boy is so injured that he'll never walk again. Now, many years later, David comes in as king. David's walking through the palace. There's so many memories of so many years ago. And all of a sudden, he thinks, whatever happened to King Saul's grandson, Mephibosheth? Whatever happened to him? And he began to inquire. People began to search and ask questions, and several days later, someone came back to David and said, we found him. He's living in a little small community called Lodabar, which literally means the land of nothing. Here you have this crippled young man living in the most severe poverty in the land of Israel. He's lost his inheritance. He's lost his heritage, the future kingship. He lost his land, he lost his health. He has absolutely nothing. And David summons him to the palace. His men pick up Mephibosheth, this crippled, and they bring him into the palace and lay him on the floor before the throne and before David. And as David sees him, he's trembling. I mean, literally shaking. You can see him shaking because he's heard the stories of his grandfather, of how much he hated David and tried to kill David, and he knew on that day he would be executed. And David rises up out of his throne. He steps forward. He says, Mephibosheth, don't be fearful. Don't be fearful. I'm not here to harm you, but I'm here to bless you. Because on this day, I honor you because of your father and because of your grandfather, Saul. I honor you. And today I restore everything that has been taken from you. In fact, on this day, from this day until your last day, you will eat at the king's table. What a story to sit down on the side of your bed with your children and tell them that story and say to them, who is your Mephibosheth? Who is it at school that eats in the cafeteria by themselves? Who is it that may have some type of problem and everyone makes fun of them and pushes them to the side? Who is it in your life that seems to have lost everything, and yet we look with different eyes? We look beyond behavior, we look beyond defects, we look beyond problems, and we see one who has been created in the image of the Most High God, and that we will invest in those people. Let me ask you again today, who deserves honor and who does not deserve honor? And again, the answer to that question is that everyone that God has breathed life into. Can you imagine living in a world that God intended, where everyone honors everyone else? Can you see what God was establishing and why God and Jesus Christ, when He taught on this very thing? You see, we may not be able to restore honor in our nation, just this group of us today, but I can tell you, you can restore it in your home. It's a funny thing how that we can come to church like this and we can carry ourselves as born-again believers and church-going people. We carry ourselves with kindness and with grace. But on Monday morning, this strange thing takes place. When we reach over and we touch the social media app, and all of a sudden we turn into an attack dog. And we are debating, and we're condemning, and we're name-calling because we lose sight of who we are. You know, I came across something the other day. It says this about Facebook. I don't know if Facebook has ever caused the lame to walk, but it sure has caused the dumb to speak. I want to tell you that in our society, what has brought so much damage is that the Christian population has gotten caught up in the hate culture. Be careful. Before you ever push send, think honor. Before you ever send that message of debating, remember honor. 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 Because it changes everything. Why do we honor? We honor because of God's creation. We look beyond bad behavior. I'd like to ask you to bow your heads for a moment, and I want to pray with you. As you are just silent for a moment, who do we need to honor? Who is that one person that would be the hardest to honor because of what they've done to you? You see, it has nothing to do with action. It has everything to do with a command that we honor. It's a mindset that we begin to shift into. And that we must train our children to be obedient, but more importantly, how to honor. You know, with your heads bowed and your eyes closed, maybe you've walked into this place today. Maybe you're far away from God. Maybe you've never really made a commitment to Christ in your life. But today, you want to make that commitment. Maybe one time in the past, you know, you felt like you were close to God, and maybe you've drifted way, way away. And today you want to restore that. If you're here today, I would love to pray with you. I'm not going to call you out. I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm not going to have you stand. But if you're here and you would like for Jesus Christ to live and dwell in your life, would you just slip up a hand real quick and say, that's where I'm at. I want to invite Christ into my life. How many would just say, Pastor, pray for me this morning that I might have a deep, authentic understanding of who Jesus is. You just put it right up and put it right down. Thank you very much. And put it right back down. Anyone else? Because I want to pray for you. If you just raise your hand, know this, that when you pray this prayer, you can't just listen to my prayer. You got to pray it just under your breath. But you invite him in. It's an invitation. And the invitation is the beginning of an amazing, unique, powerful life. Father, right now I pray for these that have raised a hand. Lord, that you would do a miracle in their life today. Lord, with their own lips, their own heart, they're saying, Lord Jesus, today I make you God. I make you God of my life. I yield myself, I humble myself before you, and now, Lord, I pray, do the miracle that you need to do in my life. That, Lord, I want to turn loose of the controls, and I want to give you the control of my life. And Lord, where now I'm living for you, and Lord, I'll never make this about religion. I'm going to make it about a relationship with you that sets me free. Lord, thank you for that commitment. Lord, thank you, Lord, for what you're doing right now as these begin to pray that prayer. Lord, come in, forgive me of my sins. Lord, today I start something fresh and new with you. Father, also I pray, Lord, for all of us in this room. God, help us to understand the power of honor. That, Lord, that we're going to honor the people around us. That, Lord, that we'll be elevated because we put people first. So, Lord, I thank you for the miracle of your word. God, let this be something that burns deep into our hearts and our memory that we never, ever forget, because it's a powerful biblical principle that you've given to us. And Lord, we thank you for that, and we love you. And in Jesus' holy name, amen.